My name is Corwin, and welcome to my Flesh and Blood High Seas Limited primer. In this video, I'm going to go over a few of the new mechanics, some of the interesting interactions that are important to know, how to play around Treasure Island, as well as a few of the more recognizable cards, and some of the cards that should push you to deciding what hero you go for. With that, we're just going to hop right into the new mechanics. There are a lot of new mechanics that were introduced in High Seas. I want to go over most of them in this video, and I will not go crazy in depth. Now, if you want all of the specific rules, there are better resources than this video. This is mostly to be an introduction to these rules and to possibly tell you what to expect before just reading them. So with that, the first rule to talk about is the new untap. We've had once per turn effects since basically the start of the game. Untap, in a way, is not once per turn, it's once every other turn, as you untap right before your draw step on your end step. So, the basics are that you untap after pitch but before draw. On turn 0, only the active player will untap. If part of the cost of something is to tap something, like a cog or a hero, then that is paid before priority is passed to the opponent to respond. Similar to how boost is a part of some Mechanologist cards cost, it works in a very similar way. And the final thing is that you cannot tap an already tapped objects for the purpose of paying a cost. Now, there is a bit of a dual side for this, and it's very important to understand the distinction between them, is that while you cannot tap an already tapped object to pay for something's cost, you can choose to tap an already tapped item for an effect. The difference is that when you are activating an effect that taps an object, you can choose something and it is applied to the trigger. When that trigger is resolved, if that tapped object is still tapped, the effect will not necessarily fizzle, but will not resolve itself, and then you do not gain the benefits. However, you can target a cog. Say that you're using a Sky Skimmer, which says that you can tap a cog to give it +1 or go again. You can choose its effect, choose an already tapped cog, and then before that trigger resolves, if you were able to do something to untap the cog that you had added to a part of the cost of the trigger, then when you resolve the trigger, it will go through like normal and tap the just recently untapped cog. So it is quite interesting on all of the gray area in that. Again, I'm only going through a cursory introduction to these rules. If you want the full introduction to these rules, I highly suggest going to the rules reprise for High Seas, the limited one in particular. They are going to go over a lot of the stuff that I go over here, as well as much more in depth. Could not recommend it more. The next rule that I want to talk about is Treasure Island. Now, Treasure Island is interesting. It is the new macro for High Seas and is the primary way that these heroes are gaining access to gold, as very few of the cards in this set actually gain gold. So Treasure Island is, at face value, pretty simple. When you attack a player, you add a counter. When you hit a player, you remove counters equal to the amount of damage you've dealt and draw and create an amount of gold equal to the counters removed. So if it has 3 counters and you do 2 damage, then you create 2 gold. Some things to be aware of, not that they might matter in your pre-release event, but are good to be aware of, is that when you attack a player for the first time per turn, a trigger is put on the stack. That's the trigger that adds the gold counter. But as with all on-attack triggers, the active player chooses which resolves first. So you can choose to resolve the effects of, let's say, a trade-in, discarding and drawing a card before adding a counter to Treasure Island. It's just something to be aware of. It's the expectation that the active player is the one putting a counter on the island, but it is both players' responsibility to ensure it's done. Make sure to keep track of counters, as it can be forgotten pretty easily in games. So just make sure to stay on top of it. The last rule that I kind of want to go over is Watery Grave. So Watery Grave cards are just cards with that keyword. When they go to the graveyard from the arena, they get put face down. Only cards that can interact with face down cards can interact with them. Remember that while you are not allowed to sort your graveyard for purposes of knowing what is in someone's deck, even if you're doing it for your own purposes, with your own deck, It's not allowed. However, you are allowed to sort cards for purposes of keeping track of specific things. In that case, you can separate watery grave cards to make it easier to cast them or to recognize which allies you have. This rule is the same as separating your earth cards to make banishing easier, or to separate CYBs, count your blessings, to make gaining life easier. Not that that latter one is much of an issue now. There are a few other keywords I want to go over, but I will be going over them when it is a bit more relevant than right here. And with that, I now want to go through all 4 heroes and the weapons available to them. And first up is Puffin. Now, Puffin is kind of interesting. I was only able to play Puffin once over my weekend at the world premiere. Having said that, I did like the hero. The hero was very fun. It felt like they were very gold dependent, because they gain a lot of value from having golden cogs, either from giving some of their attacks go again, to just basic +1, to giving their gun go again, or +1, depending upon which gun you use, or if you were lucky enough to pull one of the better Majestic cards, it enabled a lot of your power cards to do their powerful effects, as a lot of the Majestics that Puffin have available to you are pretty bad if you do not have a golden cog with you. Her ability itself is pretty self-explanatory. As an action, you can tap her to destroy a gold you control to draw a card. In my experience, I feel like Puffin wants to do this most turns. It's okay to not do it every turn, as you can't always make use of actually having a golden cog. But on most turns, you are utilizing it, and you do want it. Because of that, you do need to be gaining gold nearly every turn. Now, oftentimes, I feel like it is pretty easy for Puffin to slip through 1, maybe 2 points of damage. It's very hard for heroes to prevent all of it. And if you're playing against a deck, or if you're playing a version of the deck where you do not feel like you are able to do that quite consistently, you can always play a bit of a slower game until you stockpile some gold, and then start spinning your wheels slightly faster. Her second hero ability is also quite good, being the second time that you crank each turn, you draw a card. Now, it is difficult to actually get that second crank per turn. Now, there are not a lot of ways to create that second cog to get that extra crank bonus, in limited especially. However, when you can get it, it is often just free value and is allowing you to play at a slightly higher intellect hero, which is quite essential because a lot of her cards are quite expensive, and drawing an extra blue or even an extra buff, which oftentimes will do an additional 4 damage, is very useful. And having the second cog will enable you to play more cards in the same way described earlier. You can Sky Scammer, and then shoot with your gun, or just Sky Scammer and then shoot a buffed gun. So having your cogs are very important. It's difficult to get more than 1. I've seen it done. I have not seen it done reliably. When you get your second hero bonus, it's really nice, but most of the time you are just activating your hero ability to make sure that you have a cog to activate your card's effects. Now that we've done a cursory explanation of Puffin, I want to go to her weapons. She has 2 weapons available to her, the first being Spitfire. Both of the guns do a base damage of 2. Spitfire, however, will allow you to do 3 damage. It does come with 2 downsides, though. The first one is that to do 3 damage, you have to tap a cog you control in order to buff it by 1. I do not find that a lot of the times you have the extra cog to buff it. As mentioned earlier, you can't consistently get a second cog in play. If you could, I feel like this would be a lot better, but you just can't. In addition, to even attack with the gun in the first place requires you to tap a cog. So to get it to attack for 3, you're tapping 2 cogs instead of buffing an actual better attack. I saw one person at the event where they were able to kind of make use of it, but I feel like the better option altogether is to go with the blunderbuss. Now, the blunderbuss also comes in with a base of 2. However, instead of tapping a cog to attack with it, you have to pay 2 to tap with it. So you're able to pitch to it like a normal weapon, tap it to once per turn, or sometimes twice per turn, because you have cards that untap guns to attack and deal 2 damage. But in addition, instead of tapping a cog to give it +1, you were able to tap a cog to give it go again. Now, this is the always reliable way to get value out of your cog that you create once per turn. There are a lot of turns where you will not activate its ability and just not give it go again because there's just no point. Obviously, it's up to the hand and for the player to value how important go again is on this. But I feel like if you are playing Puffin, Blunderbuss is 100% the way to go, unless your list strongly helps Spitfire. It's just not worth it in my opinion. Also, the biggest advantage of having a weapon is that you have some avenue into a matchup where you just completely run out of cards, and it's quite difficult to do that when Spitfire needs to basically pay a gold to attack. If you are able to get counters off of Treasure Island to continue breaking gold to attack with it, that's excellent, but if you're not, then there's going to be a point where you're going to run out of gold and you're going to run out of attacks. Whereas with this, you can always keep a blue, send 2 damage, and then pass your turn. One other thing that I would like to mention with Blunderbuss before I move on, because I already feel like I've stayed here a little bit longer than I wanted to, is that Blunderbuss, having Go again, is amazing at clearing allies, both Sticky Fingers and a lot of Gravy's allies. Now, unfortunately, it only has for 2, which does not clear all of his allies, but it does clear Rigor Mortis, and Rigor Mortis is honestly one of the scariest allies he can have. It's also just some form of damage if you need something to help down a Chum or a Chowder or whatever. Now, with Puffin and our weapons talked about, let's move on to Gravy. Now, I think that Gravy is a lot of fun. I'm a wizard player. I love doing things at instant speed. His ability of tapping himself to discard and draw cards is very fun. His compass of looking at the top of his deck, not whenever he wants, but once every other turn whenever he wants, is a very fun ability. I am a huge fan of the hero and his, well, offhand. His ability of being able to discard and draw is obviously what allows him to quite easily put cards into the graveyard that have Watery Grave, or to enable his second hero ability of playing cards from Watery Grave to the arena if a blue card has been put into the graveyard this turn. So the hero kind of feeds into himself, even if you have nothing else except gold counters. I feel like the tricky thing is, though, I feel like Gravy is very dependent upon what type of allies you get to see how powerful the deck is. If you get great allies, he can do amazing things. If you get bad allies, I would probably play another hero. Because the base Necromancer cards leave a little to be desired. We'll go over that in a touch later, though. Instead, I want to talk about his offhand, Compass. Now, Compass is pretty simply just tap it, look at the top card of your deck. This is very important. It's very important, obviously, because you can discard cards off the top of your deck or your hand oftentimes, and being able to confirm that the top card is what you want it to be allows you to play the rest of your line with certainty, and get more value, because there are many cards that simply get more value if you don't have to discard a card from hand. Being able to play a paddle faster and discarding an ally with Watery Grave from the top of your deck instead of your hand is basically just keeping that yellow in your hand, and it's sometimes just as simple as that. Compass is very good. I've seen a lot of people use Compass, I don't want to say incorrectly, but I do want to say very aggressively. Maybe I am just a bit more reserved in how I use it, but I feel like Compass enables you to put together crazy lines, and I feel like people kind of use it at the first opportunity. Now, I do not have as many games as Gravy as I would want to, so maybe playing with it more aggressively is better, or maybe it's deck dependent. Unfortunately, I do not have quite as many reps into him. Unfortunately, I do not have as much testing done on that as I would like to, but it is a very fun item, and using it correctly is paramount to the deck. Now, with Compass done, I want to talk about the last of the 3 main heroes in Marlynn. So I feel like Marlynn is the most consistent, and mostly the reason why is because of her weapons, but we'll go over that when we go over her weapons. Her hero ability itself, though, is pretty solid. You can destroy a gold, as an action, you can tap her to destroy a gold token to create a Goldfin Harpoon. And a Goldfin Harpoon is basically a yellow card that says you can't pitch it, it has no block value, and it attacks for 2. But it does have Harpoon in its name, which combos off of the Hammerhead Harpoon Cannon, which is pretty nice, and is a very easy way to arsenal an arrow every turn that you have a gold. By simply, before playing all of your cards, tapping her, creating a Harpoon, playing your buffs, pitching to your bow, and then firing whatever arrow you had in your arsenal, and then arsenaling the new Harpoon. It allows you to always have an arrow in arsenal, because once that Harpoon is there, you can then, on the following turn, tap, create a new Harpoon, fire the Harpoon from arsenal, and you have a new one to put in. So Her hero ability, when you have gold, allows you to keep the game state flowing constantly, which is very good because otherwise I feel the deck is a little inconsistent. Her second hero ability, I do not find that I like using it because typically when you use it, you're put on the back foot and you're trying to recover in some way. There are a lot of ways to trigger her ability. There are ways that I prefer and ways that I do not. I am not a huge fan of pitching to the gold, to any gold that you have. It is something you can do if you need to, and it is something very important to be aware of, is that you can, if you have no arrow in arsenal, you can pitch to a gold, draw a card. When you draw a card, you can trigger her ability, which allows you to put an arrow face up in your arsenal, and then you can fire it on that same turn. My biggest issue with this is that you are going to run out of gold probably very quickly. So because of that, I'm not a huge fan of using gold. Do you need to do it in a pinch? Do it. Highly suggest it, especially if you're playing Hammerhead. The pitch values can range up quite nicely. You can tap her, create a harpoon, pitch a blue to a gold, draw a card, put the harpoon that you just created in an arsenal, and then pitch another blue off the one floating from the gold and the 3 there. You can activate her Hammerhead harpoon cannon and then fire the harpoon you just created and just put there. 4/6 overpower, which is probably going to get you a gold back. It's not bad to activate gold to trigger her ability. I just would prefer to play around it if I can. But it's something very good to have in case you need it. The other way to trigger are if you have cards that trigger draw effects. Trade-in is a very good example of this. She also has a Majestic that draws and then discards a card, and when you draw a card, it does trigger her ability, putting a card in arsenal. So you have ways to draw in other cards, and I would say that if you have those cards, I would feel a lot more comfortable playing her, and those are just good arsenal cards. Trade-in is a card that I can not speak highly enough for. Being able to put Trade-in into your arsenal at the end of your turn. Next turn, it has go again. It comes in for 3. It allows you to just draw and then it allows you to discard and draw, which triggers her ability, puts an arrow in, fire it, preferably off of cannon, but it depends on what bow you use. It allows you to send 3 towards an ally if you're fighting Gravy or Scurv, and then send the big arrow at the hero. I'm a huge fan of trading in the arsenal for Marlynn. It's a very good option. Feel like I've talked about herself enough. I want to go to her 2 weapons. She has 2 weapons, and I actually think that both are viable to a degree. I have a strong preference for one over the other, but I think depending upon what cards and what deck options you get, you can play both. So we're going to talk about Red Spine Mantle first, because I feel like I've kind of talked about Harpoon Cannon just in talking about Marlynn herself. So we're going to talk about Manta before we talk about her spec bow, basically. Now, Red Spine Manta is pretty simple. Tap, put an arrow from your hand face up into your arsenal, go again. This is the main way to get value out of a lot of the arrow cards, because the 3 to 4, I don't entirely know how many, and I don't have them on my screen, but the new arrow cards trigger when they're put in the arsenal face up. This is obviously the preferred way to get value out of those arrows. There's one that looks at the top of your deck, one that comes in for +2. There's one that comes in with go again. All of these arrows are obviously very nice when you can get their bonus value. You're getting above rate. Like the +2 one comes in for 5 on trigger, otherwise it comes in for 3. Free information about what's on the top of your deck is always nice, especially if you're running Ravenous Rabble or things like that. It can tell you if it's a good arsenal card and then fire it next turn, because if you look and see the top card's blue, you obviously don't want to attack with your Ravenous Rabble that turn. Just get more value by arsenaling and sending it next turn. Go again is very important for Ranger, especially for this deck in particular, because you don't have a lot of attack buffs. Being able to send 2 arrows per turn is really nice. There's a card that I will go over a little bit more later called Fire in the Hole, which basically it gives your next arrow +3 and untaps a bow. With cannon, its ability is relatively worthless. You're really just playing it for +3. I never really cared about untapping cannon because you don't really have enough pitch to cannon twice. But with Red Spine Manta, it can allow you to fire multiple arrows if you have go again. You can tap Manta, put in the arrow that has go again, fire the arrow that has go again, untap Manta, tap it to put the 0 for 5 arrow, and then send the 0 for 5 arrow off of the +3 for an 8, and then you're sending 12 points of damage off of the 3-card hand, and that's not bad. So Manta does have a place. I feel like Manta is much more aggressive than Cannon, but you do need a deck that helps with that. Now going to Hammerhead, which I feel is the better option. Hammerhead costs a lot of pitch, coming in at 4, which basically says pay 4, tap the bow, and your next arrow gets +4 this turn. However, if it has the name Harpoon in it, it gets Overpower. Overpower in the set is huge. There are very few block cards, and by very few I mean basically 1. There are very few D-reacts, so preventing 6 Overpower, which is what the Goldfin Harpoon comes in without any other buffs, is not impossible, but very difficult. As mentioned, I want to say there are 4 blocks and 1 D-react, but the D-react and one of the blocks are Majestics, so there's really just 3 blocks, and one of those blocks only blocks for 1. It is very difficult to prevent full damage. Now with armor and Rally the Coast Guard, there's obviously ways, but I'm getting derailed. So it's very consistent in getting gold back to create a new Harpoon. As long as you're sending Overpower, it's forcing through damage, and more importantly, it is the best end game weapon. Being able to consistently send 6 damage as a weapon is better than Puffin's 2, than Scurv's 2, which Scurv's is killable, so it's not a true 2 in the way that Puffin's is. And Gravy is the same thing. He has his allies, which are technically permanent, but the second they're killed, you lose them. So I feel like she has the best end game fatigue weapon, making her the best fatigue hero, which is quite strange for Rangers to be in. But the most important fact about Harpoon, which was not brought up, is that they're one of the new keywords, which is Go Fish. Now, Go Fish basically says when this hits, your opponent shows you a card from their hand. If it matches a characteristic red, yellow, or blue, or non-attack/attack, then they discard it and you create a gold. However, if you have activated a cannon this turn, then you look at their hand and choose a card instead. Harpoon Cannon is the only way that I'm aware of to activate Go Fish's second text line. If you get those harpoons, running Harpoon Cannon is a way to get insane amounts of value, especially because of how powerful some of those cards are. This is a set with very little disruption, and when you get disruption, it is very effective because this set is very bad at preventing disruption. There are many block 2s, and you kind of need your hand to throw decent bits of damage. You can turn a 3-card 15 into a 2-card 5 pretty easily. If you are able to take the correct card out of their hand or deny them something, either it's destroy gold, kill ally, whatever. So disruption is very important. Harpoon Cannon is the main way that Ranger is able to disrupt through their Go Fish cards. We'll go over the specific Go Fish cards later. Just wanted to mention that. But now I want to talk about the 4th and final hero, which was announced at the premiere as a surprise, which is Scurv, the first thief for Flesh and Blood. Now, Scurv is kind of interesting. His hero ability allows him to destroy a gold to create a Gold Kiss Rum. Now, Gold Kiss Rum very simply says that you may tap it, destroy it, tap your hero, and then your next action gets Go Again. This is a set where having Go Again on the right hand helps you do insane amounts of damage. Being able to predictably get Go Again or force the Go Again is very useful. Additionally, his second line of text says whenever you activate the Gold Kissed Rum, you gain a free pitch. So in a way, it is like mixing an on-demand embodiment of lightning and a vigor token. However, it is not quite that simple. To create the Gold Kiss Rum, you have to have the gold, and you have to create the rum on a completely previous turn. So you can't just wave your hand when you have gold and get Go Again. You have to set up your rum. Now, Now, to your advantage, a lot of your hands are not going to require go again, so you can pretty predictably, any turn that you don't want to activate Gold Kiss Rum, tap your hero and create one and just stockpile them. Additionally, it is harder to interact with Gold Kiss Rum than it is to interact with gold. There are cards that steal gold, there are cards where your opponent gains benefits if you have more gold than them, and Gold Kiss Rum allows you to help control those so that they are not always played against you in favor. That is actually the thing that I like most about this hero, is trying to predict and control how much gold you have to gain the most amount of benefit and prevent your opponent from gaining benefit from those gold-based cards. Now, Scurv is a really good hero. I feel like he is probably one of the better ones. I think Marlynn has a slight edge over him, and I think Gravy, in the hands of a good pilot with a good deck, can probably outperform, as was shown in the calling. A good Gravy can go far, hit hard, and play amazing lines. But I do feel like this hero is very reliable. And is a very good option if you have the opportunity to play him. That is the one downside with this hero. Unlike the other three where you can choose them, you can only play this hero if you pull him naturally from one of your packs. In Sealed, you have a slightly higher chance of this. You're just opening more packs. You have a higher chance of pulling him from one of your 8 packs. In Draft, other players might draft him. He's a good hero, so if there's no rare that currently matches a hero identity and they want to go with a more pirate generic focused hero, this would be a very competitive card for that. So it is difficult to get him. If you do, and you have cards that support Thief, I think it is a very good hero. I think that he struggles a bit into the end game, and if you are playing against a Marlynn that can fatigue you, it is rough. If you're playing against a Gravy that can fatigue you, it is rough. I was not finding that Gravies were fatiguing me, but I was finding that Marlyns were. So be aware of that if you're playing this hero. Using Sticky Fingers is quite difficult. Choosing when to unperch him, when to attack with him, is very tricky. I, at the start, thought that I would only use it to try to disrupt and steal gold from your opponent, but because you have no other weapon, he needs to be protected, in a sense, and only deployed when you can get guaranteed value out of him. And on the note of Sticky Fingers, I want to talk about one of the new mechanics being perched. Perch is very interesting. Basically, he starts in one of your equipment zones, in this case, your offhand, and he has health like any other ally, but he can only be attacked once you've attacked with him and effectively unperched him. There's no current way to perch him once you've unperched him, so he's basically just a normal ally at that point. And he is very easy to kill, and he is your only infinite way to do damage, so to speak. Because of this, I have mixed opinions on when to send him. There are some games where I've gained value from sending him very early, other games where I try to wait very long to try to threaten particular points of on-hit. Against Puffin, I like to use him a bit more aggressively. Against Marlynn, I like to use him a bit more in the late game. Against Gravy, I feel like it very much depends on the match, and you can't go in with a set opinion on when to use him. So Perch is very interesting. Playing with Sticky Fingers correctly is pretty important to the hero, and I'd say it's probably the most important thing, because the Gold Kissed Rum is pretty easy. You can, at a base level, you can really just ask yourself, am I using Gold Kiss Rum this turn to get go again? If yes, do so. If no, create a new Gold Kiss Rum. And that's about it for your hero ability. If you're not tapping your hero ability for something else, create Rum. So that's not the most tricky thing in the world, but deploying Sticky Fingers is the very technical part of the deck, and playing around it poorly will make you struggle into a lot of your matchups. I actually really enjoyed playing around it. Sanctuary of Aria, while I liked the art, the card was cool, it felt like it was really just like, oh, we need a way to prevent arcane damage because we have arcane heroes in the set. We're not able to put any null rune into the set, so let's just shrug our shoulders and make a macro that allows you to prevent damage so that you can prevent arcane damage. And like, it worked. It did its job. And like, it worked. It did its job. I did not find it very interesting to play around. It was just, let's have an expensive piece of null rune just so that we have it because we need to, otherwise the wizards will do wizard things and it won't be fun. But Treasure Island I find very fun to play around. the idea of being able to fuel your hero ability further and be able to present more damage offensively by committing offensively and guaranteeing the hit, I find fun. The idea of trying to stockpile gold by playing really slow at the start and then having a turn where you ramp it up is very fun, because there are many games where I've either been the Marlynn or fought a Marlynn who played very defensively until there were like 6 counters on the treasure island, and then they sent one attack where they were able to get 3 gold counters, and then from there they were able to consistently create harpoons, as opposed to someone who did 1 point of chip damage when there was 1 counter, they created 1 harpoon, and then we were just back to playing mid-range with neither of us really doing damage, but being able to pivot your game plan around how many counters are on was very fun. Being able to pivot whether you attacked or blocked, or how much you blocked, or whether you blocked with equipment, to actually give your opponent gold, because a lot of cards in this set are stronger if your opponent has more gold than you, was very fun. A lot of my gameplay was on Scurv because I played Scurv in the Battle Hardened, and I really enjoyed allowing my opponent to get gold off of Treasure Island only to activate abilities to steal it back. As mentioned, one of the things that I found most fun about playing Scurv was gold manipulation, either keeping your gold count down, giving your opponent up, or just gold count manipulation in general, being able to destroy your gold more efficiently than the other heroes, to always create rum, something I just found enjoyable. So Treasure Island is very fun to play around. I find that it is most important for Puffin and Marlynn. When talking about Gravy, I said that gold is very important for his hero ability. But when I go to talk about Gravy and the core Necromancer cards, I will explain the other way to activate Watery Grave other than discarding through his hero ability. But yes, Puffin and Marlynn, they need consistent gold. Puffin to get her cogs, Marlynn to get her harpoons. Marlynn wants her harpoons for fatigue. Puffin wants it for value. Scurv, I feel like getting a stockpile of Gold Kiss rum is nice, but I almost always had a rum when I wanted one, so I never really worried about it too much. With my games as Gravy, I felt like if I had gold, great. There were some turns where I really wanted it, other turns where I didn't. It's just really hand dependent. I typically had gold when I wanted to with Gravy. Gravy was probably the most consistent hero that I played where I wanted to pitch 2 gold to break them, to draw cards, and try to play like a big hand like that. He was probably the most consistent hero that I played that had that. It really just depends. Playing around Treasure Island is very important, though. Hopefully this gave more of an idea to it. Additionally, there are a few cards that add counters to Treasure Island, mostly the expedition cards and chart the course. When you add counters to Treasure Island is obviously very deck dependent, very playstyle dependent, what you're trying to play. Typically, you'd always want to do it if you can force the gold through and you want the gold. As mentioned, there are not always times where you want gold and you want your opponent to have more gold than you. It really just depends on the flow of the game. If you are playing a hero that needs more gold and you feel like you can force the gold through, those cards are great and probably higher priority picks than others. Chart the Course is basically a +3 and +1 gold if you can guarantee force damage there. Those 3 for 7s are also great. The Expedition card that comes in for 7, costs 3 to play, and puts an additional counter on goal on Treasure Island is very good because that's just a hard card to block, so you're able to get more value. So those cards are good just at a base value, and I would probably add them to the deck because it's always going to be game dependent on whether you want to add the gold counter or not. And I'd rather have the option than not. I just prefer Chart the Course over Nimbleism unless you're running Jack Be Nimble, Jack Be Quick. It's just a better card. Now I'm going to talk about some of the Majestics and the power cards. And I will start with what I feel is probably the best Majestic in the set, which is Conqueror of the High Seas. Conqueror of the High Seas. Now, this card is just amazing. Out of the cards that could come in for 8 go again and basically have the effects of a CNC, this is really good. It does cost 4, but there are a lot of blues, and you already kind of want to run a lot of blues in your deck anyways. If you're playing Puffin, it's because your cards cost a lot. If you're playing Marlynn, it's because of cannons. If you're playing Gravy, because of a lot of reasons, his cards cost pitch. You can play blue actions and then close the chain to add them to your graveyard, activating his ability. So a lot of decks kind of want their blue counts, so you can, not reliably, but if you were willing to arsenal this card for a turn, I'd feel comfortable being able to cast it. And it's disruption. As mentioned earlier, disruption in this set is amazing. Being able to destroy Marlynn's Harpoon, which is an arsenal, is just great. It is going to set them back an insane amount. They are going to have to pitch to their gold, which is going to deplete their gold faster. They're probably going to block this to some degree, unless they're just eating 8 to the face. It's an amazing card. It's good against Puffin because it disrupts. It's good against Gravy because it disrupts. It's good against Marlynn because it disrupts. And against a lot of those heroes, they are arsenaling yellow cards, or at least in Marlynn's case, she very commonly will arsenal cards. She will very commonly arsenal yellow cards because her gold and harpoons are yellow, so you're very likely creating a gold in addition to any on-hit gold from Treasure Island. Conqueror of the High Seas is an amazing card. I don't really want to talk about it much more beyond that. Another one is King Shark Harpoon. With Marlynn and Cannon, it is coming in for 10 overpower. It is activating Go Fish. It is basically impossible to block. You're going to choose the best attack in their hand, make them discard it, draw a card, or create a gold, not draw a card. It is an amazing card. My point that I'm getting to is that their Majestics in this set are unbelievably good, especially in a sealed or limited format. Not all Majestics are like this. There are some Majestics which are just okay or decent, very good in constructed, but fair and balanced in limited. Still rather have them than a lot of the rares, but not astronomically powerful. The problem is that there's also some Majestics that are unbelievably good. If you get one of these Majestics, like that one, or like that one, I highly suggest playing the hero that goes along with them. Conqueror of the High Seas can be used by everyone, so you don't really need to swap your hero to play it. King Shark Harpoon, however, is Marlynn specific. It's a good card. If you can play the hero that runs the good card, nearly every game that I've played has gone second cycle, so you're going to see your good card. If you could see your good card and you play it, you're going to rip tempo. You're going to be in for a good time. You will do good things with this card. Unfortunately, it does make the set a little awkward to play around, because if you don't get a good Majestic and your opponent gets one, then you're struggling. But that's limited, right? That's part and parcel. That's part of the game. So this is just the comment that the Majestics in the set can be really good. Now, powerful Majestics aside, I want to take a moment to talk about interesting interactions and how to get the most amount of value just out of them. I didn't want to spend a lot of time on this part, but I did want to take a moment to mention it because it is important. Getting value out of your cards is obviously nice, so this is getting value out of your discard cards mostly. There are a lot of cards that allow you to discard cards and gain additional value. Rally the Coast Guard is really good. Allows you to discard a card, block for 3. If you have 2 blocks, it allows you to basically block with both the 2 blocks and block for 5. It helps get around overpower better. Rally the Coast Guard, it's a good card. I like it. I'm a huge fan of it. What makes it even better is when you run either Sirens of Safe Harbor, which say when you put this into the graveyard from anywhere, gain 1, or Fiddler's Green. Now, when you're able to discard these cards, you are gaining a lot more value. Block with Rally the Coast Guard, discard Sirens Harbor, you're basically blocking for 6 or blocking for 5 and gaining 1, so it's a 6-point value. But when you're able to do it with something like Fiddler's Green, then you're able to get 8 points of value off of 2 cards. And 4 points of value per card in limited is really good. Like, I don't think I need to mention Aurora. Her entire deck was basically built around 0 for 4s. Like, 4 value, 1 card, really good. These are difficult to obviously do. Saying that you have the Fiddler's Green and the Rally the Coast Guard in the same hand is, you won't always have it. But there are other cards that trigger this. Aside from Gravy having a hero ability that allows him to discard cards, there are a couple powerful cards. Swindler's Grift, Trade-In, and Golden Triple. Now, I already talked about Trade-In. I'm a huge fan of Traden. I think Traden is amazing in Marlyn. I think Traden is amazing in Gravy. I think it is pretty good in the other two as well. Obviously, when you're able to attack with a Traden from Arsenal, it gives it go again, and then you're able to discard a Sirens of Safe Harbor or a Fiddler's Green and then draw a card back. You are gaining value off of your discard. It's so nice. Now, again, same thing as always. You're not always going to have those, but it is important to be aware of these interactions. Golden Tipple's another good one. If you have yellow Fiddler's Greens and Golden Tipples, being able to discard a yellow Fiddler's Green, create a gold, gain 2 life, draw a card. It's a nice interaction. In Gravy, this card is great because then it counts as a blue card that you can put into your graveyard, or if you're running red ones, you can discard a blue. So it's very good. The point that I'm saying is that discarding effects are actually really good in this set. And because of that, anything that tells you what's on the top of your deck is also pretty good because you can predict what you're going to draw when you discard draw, which is why the compass is really good for Gravy. We'll get back on other ways to look at the top card of your deck in a bit, but those are interesting interactions to be aware of. Play around your discard value. You can gain more value. It's not rocket science. It's not innovative. I'm sure many of you have already seen it. Just pointing out because I'm pointing out a lot of obvious things. Now I want to go to basically bulk card references. I want to mention cards that I felt were a lot stronger and are cards that you want to be aware of when you're either drafting or putting together your sealed deck. These are just good cards. So what I want to start with are the 0-for-7s. There are a lot of 0-for-7s in this set. I already showed one through Rally the Coast Guard. I'm not going to show all of them. There are a couple that are nice. Walk the Plank is really good. On-hit tapping a hero is pretty good. A lot of heroes rely on tapping for their end game. A lot of heroes rely on tapping for just base value. Being able to tap Puffin prevents her from creating a cog. She can untap herself with perk ups, but if she doesn't have one of those, she can't create a cog, she can't get go again / extra value. Tapping Gravy prevents him from getting gold, Puffin from getting a harpoon, Scurv from maintaining his gold count. Expedition to Horizon's Mantle is the Expedition card I mentioned a bit ago, sending a 3-for-7 that puts a counter on if you know your opponent can't block it out, either because they don't have a lot of 3 blocks in their deck or they are out of armor, is really nice. Being able to get 2 gold on a turn instead of 1 is pretty good value. Your deck needs to kind of consist of a lot of 3-for-7s. I find that I prefer to not run 3-for-7s actually if you have better cards, but the problem is that you don't have better cards. So you run your 3-for-7s because you don't have better cards, and 3-for-7s when you don't have good cards are good. So run your 3-for-7s, especially some of the 3-for-7s that block for 3. There aren't a lot of them, but keep your eye out for them. So now we are going to a bunch of the cards that are, as mentioned, 1-card 4s. First up is On the Horizon. Now I separated On the Horizon from the other batch because I'm going to kind of go through the other batch quickly and I want to take a bit longer on the Horizon. As mentioned previously, knowing what's on the top of your deck, really good. Being able to know whether you're sending Rabble this turn or next turn, based off whether there's a blue or red on the top of your deck, is pretty good. Being able to see whether there's a Watery Grave ally on the top of your deck as Gravy without having to use your compass is really good. On the Horizon, good card. If you get it in red, run it, because it's a 0-for-4. It's defensive 0-for-4, but take it. They're amazing. It's also a block which helps get around Overpower, which is amazing against a couple of the HMS ships that have Overpower, as well as Marlyn. Take the card. It's a good card. There's also a Mutiny card that gives cards Overpower, so something to be aware of as well. But yeah, On the Horizon, very good. Highly suggest. Now a bit rapid fire. Scar for a Scar. Scar for a Scar is very good. It's kind of easy to control your life total. You're kind of always in the same life range. The amount of games that I've played where I've had enough life that I couldn't let a little bit more slip through to enable my Scar for a Scar to have go again, I just kind of steamrolled. So that's obviously not always going to happen. There's going to be games where you're going to be leading on life and you need the go again and you're not going to have it. It's just the nature of the beast, but it's 0-for-4. Go again is technically conditional on 0-for-4s. Be aware of it, but it's an amazing card. Run it. Ravenous Rabble. I don't prefer Rabble over Scar. I think Scar is better in this set, but if you can predict what's on the top of your deck, Rabble is really good. I feel like Rabble is probably, I don't know, Rabble in Gravy is sometimes great, sometimes bad. I feel like Gravy runs the most amount of blues, which decreases the chance of hitting a red, but you always know what's on the top of your deck, and I feel like Gravy is a bit more patient than the other heroes, so you can arsenal a Rabble until you know that it's safe to go and get full value out of it. So I'd still probably run it, but it is what it is. Life for a Life is now a common. It comes in, it's a life for a life. It costs 1 pitch, comes in for 4, go again if you have less life. On hit, gain 1 life. It's very good. Additionally, there's a new card. I don't have notes of it and I don't have it pulled up, but I think it costs, it either costs 1 or 2. It has the Scar mechanic where if your opponent has more life than you, then it has go again, and it comes in for 4, and I think it's just a reverse life for a life where if it hits, your opponent takes extra damage. I don't remember what it is. I don't remember what it is verbatim. It's good. Your 4s are good. Life for a Life and even that card are still pretty good because I find that you have floating pitch a lot of the time. It is somewhat hero dependent, but yeah, I like Life for a Life. It's good. Now, a quick reference to Rabble, especially because it's on screen, just as a reminder for anyone who has forgotten the Drill My Days. When you attack with Ravenous Rabble, you have to declare what target it is targeting before its on attack trigger happens. So you do not know what value it is coming in until you choose your target. So if you're targeting a Chowder, which has 3 life, you have to choose that you're attacking Chowder and then reveal. And if you hit a blue, then, well, you're out of luck. And if you hit a yellow or a red, then you're good. So be aware, target before on attack trigger. Next up that I technically put here, but I've already talked about it a lot, so I'm not going to talk about it again. Trade-in. Trade-in's good. Verb mentions already reasoned. Verb reasons already mentioned. I would run one. In red, I don't like yellow and blues. However, I could see citing in yellows specifically if you're fighting Scurv and you thought that you could pitch it until a time when they're about to send out Sticky Fingers, because the yellow ones will kill them, and Sticky Fingers is very scary. Marlynn kind of struggles with go again, so if you can do that and snipe him, then you're in business. Otherwise, it's a bit tricky. Red ones, I would run though. Next cards are the High Tide cards. Now, there are a lot of cards with High Tide. I'm going to reference them very quickly. First one is Swiftwater Sloop. I like Swiftwater Sloop. Being able to pitch the 2 cards to give it go again is actually very tricky in most decks. You can do it through sacking gold to pitch extra cards. If you're Marlynn, you can do it with Cannon, which is an amazing line. One of my favorite lines is pitch 2 blue to Cannon, float 2, spend those 2 to Swiftwater Sloop, and then after Sloop resolves, send the Harpoon for 6 overpower. It's a line that I am very happy with, that I've played a lot of times on my games with Marlynn, and I was always really happy when I could consistently do it. Swiftwater Sloop, very good. A little tricky to pull off. Some decks can do it better than others, but it's good to be aware of. The other one that I kind of want to talk about is the Battalion. The Battalion is High Tide, comes in for 9. In my opinion, it's a little bit worse than a 3 for 7 because it requires you to pitch the extra card. There are times where I like it more, but not often. The one benefit is blocks for 3, and there's not a lot of 3 for 7s that block for 3. If you get these in blue, I love them because blue block 3s are good. Blue block 3s that you can technically attack with if you get to your pitch cycle are even better in my opinion, but I like the card. It's good. I like the card. It's good. Probably wouldn't run it over other things if you had good cards, but is a thing. After this, there are the HMS ships. First up is Barracuda. I feel like Barracuda is the best against Gravy because it on hit destroys an ally, and you can give it overpower if you have High Tide. It costs 4, so giving it High Tide is not unreasonable like Sloop, and it destroys an ally. This is obviously very good because you can hit the Gravy for 7 and then kill the Chum, which has 6 life, and you're getting insane amounts of value off of it. It is tricky, obviously. These are rares. You're not going to have a lot of them, but they're good. Next up is Kraken. I feel like Kraken is probably the second best. It destroys an item. I like it. Has overpower +1. It's good. If you can get it, it's nice. Blocks for 3. It's yellow. Yellows are actually really good in this set, in my opinion. So it's good. The worst of them, in my opinion, is the Marlynn. Now, it's good in the fatigue. is good in the fatigue matchup. Technically, anything that destroys extra cards is nice. I just don't feel like it has as much value as the other ones. Being able to seal gold or rum, or on the very rare chance amulets, are pretty nice, so I prefer the other one. That one is the best, I'd say, the steel item one, and the Barracuda one is obviously the best against people who run allies, but it is bad against everybody else. So it's just, yeah, those are how I'd rank them. I'd probably still run the Marlynn if I played it, but I could also very easily see myself not. Obviously, the best high tide card is Conqueror, but yeah. But with that, now we can go to my favorite batch of cards, which are the Gold Hunter cards. Now, there are 4 Gold Hunter cards, and I'm going to go over them all briefly. The first one is Longboat. Longboat costs 0, comes in for 3 if your opponent has less gold. If you have less gold than your opponent, it comes in for 5. 0 for 5's really good. It's tricky to get, but 0 for 5 is really good if you have less gold, either because you're able to manage it better. If you're Puffin Scurv, you're able to manage it better. If you crack a bunch of gold right before you play it and then have less gold when you play it, whatever the reason is, why ever you have less gold, being able to send 0 for 5 is really good. I love it as Scurv because you realistically have low gold count and you can give it go again, actually, by activating a rum, destroy rum, come in for 0 for 5, and then send something else. Huge fan of it. Next up is Lightboat. Lightsail. Sorry, my bad. Lightsail comes in for 4, costs 1. It has go again if you have less gold. I like Lightsail. I run Lightsail. It's probably not the best, but anything that has go again that comes in for 4 for relatively cheap is pretty good. Same logic behind Life for Life applies here. If you can guarantee the go again or can gain value out of its pitch arrangement, then it's nice. My least favorite out of the 4 cards, and the one that I probably have used the least, is Gold Hunter Marauder. I like the card in theory. Overpower is something that's very nice. I just feel like it's probably one of the worst 3 for 7s. It doesn't come in for 7, it comes in for 6. It's one of the worst 3 for 6s, I guess. I'd rather run Sirens of Safe Harbor. I just don't love the card. I feel like it's the worst of them. Could I see running it? Sure. It depends on your pools. Now to Gold Hunter Kretch, which is amazing in my opinion. It costs 4, comes in for 7, following the theme of expensive card for 7. However, if you control less gold than your opponent, it comes in for 2 less. One of my favorite lines is when you were gold deprived is pitch 1 blue, come in with Lightboat, 4 for 1, have the 2 pitch over, spend it on catch, and then you're sending 11 points of damage off of 3 card hand, which is not amazing in constructed numbers, but is pretty good in sealed in my opinion. So it's good. I like catch. I like light sail. I like sloop a lot. Admittedly, most of my time playing sloop was on Scurv, and I feel like it's a lot better on Scurv than it is on anybody else. But it's still good as a finisher. Or as a 1-card hand. And that finishes all of the generic and pirate cards. Now I want to take a moment to talk about each of the more hero-specific cards. Again, first up with Mechanologist. All right. Now, first, I want to talk about the Mechanologist buff cards. You have a couple. I'm talking about 3 in particular. There are a few outside of this, but I feel like these 3 are the most important in the deciding factor on whether or not you play Puffin. So first, I want to talk about Titan the Screws. Now, Titan Screws is very simply, your next Mechanologist attack gets +4. You may untap a cog you control and go again. All 3 of these buffs cost 1 and buff for 4, and they do a different effect. I think Titan Screws is the best out of them. Being able to untap a cog allows you to gain value multiple times off of 1 cog. A lot of times, if you are low gold, you're able to basically act as if you have 2 cogs off of 1 gold spent, which is very nice. A lot of your game plans, when you use multiple cogs, rely on them using different cards and therefore different effects, which allow you to gain the benefit of the untap. I really like Titan Screws. However, it technically is not the best because Perk Up is the best if you have the gold to pay for it. Now, I mentioned when I was talking about Puffin at the start that it is difficult to reliably get the second cog to crank, to affect your abilities, to draw a card off of Puffin's second hero ability, but the most consistent and most reliable way to do it is with perk up. Perk up allows you, basically, you tap Puffin, create a gold, play a perk up, buff your next attack, untap Puffin, tap her again, create another cog, and then you draw a card off her hero ability, and you're able to swing in harder. Perk up is technically the best. It's obviously the most gold draining because you have to spend the second gold for the other cog, but it allows you to make use of a lot of your rares that require you to like twice per turn taps. You're able to activate your twice per turn taps. If you're playing Spitfire, it allows you to tap a cog to attack and tap a cog to give +1. Then you're coming in with a gun for 7 with 2 pitch spent, or 1 pitch spent, sorry, which is pretty nice. So perk up is it's pretty good. I like it. It is the best if you have the gold, which I find that most of the time you do. The final one, then there's the final one, which I do not like quite as much. It mostly feels like a 1-for-4 buff, which a lot of times in your floating pitch is, I don't want to say free value, but it kind of is Drawback the Hammer. Drawback the Hammer allows you to untap a gun you control. It's not amazing. I have not found many times where I have fired a gun multiple times per turn, and I have not seen a lot of times where someone have fired a gun multiple times per turn. Now, obviously, it's good to have options utility. It's nice. I just don't feel like it is quite as consistent as I would want it to be, because your guns just aren't great. They're not. You use them because they're there and because they're nice and because you have the pitch too. But you're just not able to do it multiple times. You're definitely not able to do it with Spitfire because Spitfire doesn't have Go Again, and I don't think any cards in Mechanologist allow an attack to have Go Again. There's the Mutiny card, but we'll talk about the Mutiny cards when we talk about Gravy. But it's basically very difficult to give Spitfire Go Again. So you're just buffing the blunderbuss, which costs 2 pitch. It's not great. It is what it is. It's a 1-for-4. We run it. Same reason why you run Life for a Life. You run this, it's a 1-for-4. Life for Life is technically a 1-for-5, but we'll not talk about that. Those are the buff cards. Mechanologist has a lot of attacks, but I really am only going to talk about 2 attacks. And those 2 attacks are first, Cloud Skiff, and second, Sky Skimmer. Now, I like these cards because they have Go Again, and cost 1 pitch. A lot of what I've seen with Puffin, and a lot of what I've played with Puffin, is that having your pitch line up to attack with gun is how you get a lot of your value. Sending in a Sky Skimmer and a buff card pay 1, float 2, Sky Skimmer, send it for 7 Go Again, gun for 2, is a nice play. Being able to not buff or arsenal a buff and just pitch the 1 to Cloud Skiff for 5 Go Again, and then sending in the gun for 2 is nice. It's very good. It's ways how you can get more consistent 3-for-7s, which, as mentioned, are not wonderful. Prefer other cards, but being able to get 3-for-7s that are more flexible, or could come in for 8 rather than 7, or block for 3, as mentioned, these are nice things. Now, you're not going to win off of these, obviously, but I also feel like Puffin is the hardest hero to justify in this set. I feel like Puffin can be amazing, but you really need your good high-hitting cards, your Majestics, your good rares, a lot of buffs. You need to justify the hero to really make her work, as opposed to the other heroes where you can kind of shrug your shoulders and be like, Marlynn's good because I create Harpoon and send for 6 overpower. You can't do that with Puffin. But I do feel like having these Go Again cards are really good. I like Sky Skimmer because, for the same reason I like the gold longboat that comes in for 5. 0-for-5s are good. They're good. 1 card coming in for 5, like, can't deny it. But that is it for Mechanologist cards. That's all that I'm really going to talk about. There's obviously more. If you want the complete set, there are ways to find it, either through Fabrary. I think I just go to Fabrary. So you go to Fabrary and you can go to all the cards, and that's what I would do. All the cards are there, so you can go through them. But those are the Mechanologist cards I'm going to talk about, because I feel like those are the ones that help you. Other things to mention, actually, I'm going to pull open. I'm going to go off script a little bit and pull open the last buff that I remember off the top of my head, which is Goldwing Turbine. It costs 2, it buffs for 3, it doesn't have go again, so you have to crank the Golden Cog token. You're going to do that anyways, but you do have to crank it, it's worth noting. It gets you your draw card, it's nice. It's the final of your buffs, in my opinion. So it's pretty good. Run it if you get it. It's very good. I should have added this with the other buff cards, because it is one of the I'm playing this hero cards. So it's there. Goldwing Turbine. Now moving from Mechanologist onto Ranger. I already talked about Hammerhead Harpoon Cannon versus Red Spine Mantle. I'm going to just mention one of the cards that I mentioned there but did not pull up, which is Fire in the Hole. Now, Fire in the Hole is pretty good. It untaps a bow you control, gives you next arrow +3. It's nice. It's basically just a red version of what's the reload card? There's some other card that basically says +3 to your next arrow. You may put an arrow from your hand face up into your arsenal. It's basically the same. Fire in the Hole and that card are the same thing in Red Spine Mantle, basically. Fire in the Hole is obviously not amazing for cannon, whereas the other one is, because being able to get cards in your arsenal consistently is actually a little bit of a struggle with that until you get your infinite gold. So getting anything that puts cards into arsenal is good. As mentioned, Trade-In, that card that I'm not remembering its name. I'm kind of wanting to obsess over it until I find it. So forgive me my indulgence. Call in the Big Guns. Call in the Big Guns is its name. You may put an arrow from your hand, face up in your arsenal. If you're running Red Spine Mantle, it's basically the same card. Difference is that this one comes in rainbow, and the other one does not. This is better in this is also better in canon. So that was just that card. Done talking about it. Already talking about Hammerhead versus Mantle. But now I want to go into a bit of the cards that suggest both gameplay. I'm going to talk about harpoons first with cannon, and then I'll talk about arrows for Mantle. So there are a total of, I want to say 7, but I kind of want to, like, 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 7 harpoons in this set. 1 token, 6 actuals. I'm only going to talk about 4 of them because we already talked about talked about King Shark. King Kraken is a worse King Shark because it targets non-attack actions, and there's less of those in the set. They're just less desirable to take. And one of them is a Rusty Harpoon, which is a blue block 3 fire for 1 harpoon. It's nice, but it's not defining. So we're going to talk about the Kellerfin Harpoons and then Goldfin Harpoon, or in the inverse, actually. So Goldfin Harpoon, it's our token. As mentioned, it's a yellow card, which is unpitchable, costs 0, comes in for 2, has a harpoon in its name, and it's an arrow, so you can only fire it from arsenal. It's good. I like to say that when you have consistent amounts of gold, Marlynn is like a fake intellect 5 hero because you're always tapping to create a harpoon in your hand, so it's like you basically have a 5th card. It's not, obviously, but harpoon is very good. Harpoon allows you to get pretty consistent value out of your hands. Overpower is good. You're able to consistently get gold through firing a harpoon with overpower, so it's basically able to pay for itself as long as you don't have to break a gold to put it in arsenal. I like it. It's good. It's good. It's why I run cannon, is because I think Goldfin Harpoon with cannon is very good and very consistent, and I like playing a little bit of the slower fatigue side to Marlynn more. But you do not run cannon. Well, I don't justify Marlynn with the with the Goldfin Harpoons. I justify Marlynn with the Kellerfin Harpoons, in which they come in 3 colors. Obviously, the 3 colors. I'm just going to pull up in blue. Blue is just, they're all blue. They just target a different one, whatever their name is. So as mentioned earlier, all of these harpoons have Go Fish. Go Fish triggers 2 ways, either if you've activated a cannon or not. If you haven't, then the opponent shows you 1 card. If it matches, they discard it, you create a gold. If you've activated a cannon, you look and choose a card from their hand. These are really good, purely on the fact that disruption is really good. And if you're running cannons, which you are to activate the secondary ability, you are choosing a card from their hand. When I first saw the spoiler for this card, my brain immediately went to, wow, it looks like they just printed more surgical extractions, because they kind of did. in a way, it feels like a surgical extraction for Ranger if you can fire your cannon. The red one is obviously amazing. The blue one is obviously amazing. The yellow one is all right and limited, depending upon the deck. Obviously, it's great against Gravy. I find that it's okay against Marlynn and okay against Scurv. Scurv is more incentivized to run yellows because a couple of the thief cards are yellow. Otherwise, people don't run yellows because yellows aren't good, except Gravy, which has to. So the yellow one, I'd probably still run it. It's still good. It tells you what your opponent's hand is, and there's no surprises. So it's still good. But you're really looking for the blue or the red one, or preferably the two Majestics. Harpoons are good. There's the red one. I'll leave it up on screen for a second so that anyone can pause and read. And there's the yellow one. And I'll just find Rusty Harpoon because I might as well, since I talked about all the others. Rusty Harpoon. There you go. So now I'm going to talk about the arrows. So first is the Majestic arrow, Barbed Barrage. I'm not really talking about Majestics. I talked about how powerful they are earlier. This is one of the more tame Majestics in my opinion. It's great against Gravy. I don't think that needs justification. Otherwise, it's a 1-for-5 arrow, which is pretty good. I like it. The face-up arrows, however, there are a couple face-up arrows, and they are pretty good when you can put them face-up. Dry Powder Shot is a 0-for-5 card when you put it face-up. If you're running Mantle, this is a really good one-card hand. A lot of the rest of them just come in for 4 base, but they have different effects. Entangling Shot taps target hero. Already mentioned how good tapping heroes are from Walk the Plank. Nettling Shot taps to ally. It's great against Scurv. It's great against Scurv. It's great against Gravy. It's a good card. Something to be aware of is you cannot attack Sticky Fingers while he is perched, but you can target him. So if if Sticky Fingers is still perched and you play a Nettling Shot, you can still tap him. Not that it always will matter, but it's something to be aware of. I won a game based off that interaction, like single-handedly. I was going to lose otherwise because he was about to attack with him and I was at 2 life, so it was coming in for lethal because I had to block the main attack. I was able to claw back tempo after tapping him, and then I was able to wrest victory away from him just through fatiguing him. So be aware of that's an interesting interaction. So it's very good. It's obviously better against Gravy, but you're running arrows, so it's an arrow. Scouting Shot allows you to look at the top card of your deck. Already talked about top card of the deck. Being able to know what's on the top of your deck before you pitch to gold if you need to reload an arrow is very nice. Swift Shot is probably the best of these arrows in my opinion because it's go again. If you're running Red Spine Mantle, you're kind of looking for go again. So, but it's just good for Marlynn in general. So go again, good. And I feel like that is all of the arrows. Yeah, I feel like that's all the arrows. I could be wrong though. But I feel like that's all the new arrows. There's like a couple of the other ones like Second Shot, Headshot, and Salvaging Shot. Second Shot's good because it says go again. Headshot is a worse dry powder in my opinion. That might be controversial. I don't really know. But the only one out of those 3 arrows that I want to talk about is Salvaging Shot, because Salvaging Shot is huge. Getting Salvaging Shot, honestly, in any color, but preferably red or blue, is great because it is a way to prevent yourself from fatiguing. And limited fatigue is always an issue, especially because you're playing the deck that's best at fatigue. Having any extra tools that will push you further into committing that is great. Being able to Salvaging Shot and fire at Gravy's allies, forcing the card to be put on the bottom of your deck while still killing nearly all allies in the game off of just a base arrow is amazing. It's obviously just great in general as well. It's a block 3. If you're using the blue ones, it's a blue block 3. It's great. Has on hit if you decide to attack with it, but otherwise, like, it's a blue block 3. The red ones are great. I love them. They're one of the better arrows to Arsenal and Fire, in my opinion. You're able to increase the chance of them hitting if you're running Cannon because you're able to give them +4. Not overpower, unfortunately, but the +4 is in most cases enough to force it through because people just can't block 9 consistently. To consistently block 9, you'd either need armor or to block with all 4 cards hand in hand because most people don't have 3 blocks in hand. So it's really nice. Salvaging Shot, very good. If you run them, they're really important to the Gravy matchup because Gravy can fatigue you, even though you're the better fatigue hero. He can fatigue you, so be aware of it. Puffin's probably not ever going to fatigue you. Scurv is probably just going to aggro race you. So it's mostly good in the mirror and against Gravy, but be aware of it. Now that we're done with Ranger, I want to talk about Scurv before talking about Gravy, because I feel like Gravy is probably the most complex out of them. So we're going to talk about Scurv first. Now we're going to talk about gaining value with Gold Kiss Rum. I already kind of talked about this, so this will be short. You can tap your hero. If you do, you destroy this, and your next action gains go again. Your hero can't untap unless they're a pirate. We're all pirates, so we're all pirates here. Gold Kiss Rum is very good because being able to guarantee and convert go again on some hands allow you to send massive amounts of damage. It's just really nice. The Vigor token is also really good, either to help patch resource gaps from mass pitching to gold, or to send an attack more reliably. Being able to pop Vigor for the resource alone and not the go again is actually really good. Say that you have more life than your opponent. You can tap it to give a life for a life, go again, and pay for the cost, and then follow it up with another zero cost card. Or if you have less life, then you can still pay with it for it. Being aware that you gain resources when you activate these are really, really important. Like, the Vigor tokens are not always used, but when they come in clutch, they come in clutch. Be aware of it. Play around it. The deck is kind of built in ways that you can play around it, so yeah, like, it's great. Even if you don't have multiple attacks, being able to give something go again so that you can attack with Sticky Fingers that turn is still really good. Say that you send you have 2 cards in hand, you send a 3 for 7, sorry, but you give it go again and then you attack with Sticky Fingers, because that's the correct turn to commit Sticky Fingers, and then you can get value out of that and start stealing the extra gold. Gold Kiss Rum is why Scurv is good. Use it aggressively, I would say. You don't need to kind of hold it. You kind of want to stockpile it. In the early game, you kind of want to stockpile it, because when you use it, you just use it. And then anytime that you don't use it, you create more of it. That's kind of the game plan. Sticky Fingers is next. Sticky Fingers, in my opinion, is the most complex thing about playing Scurv. Deciding when to attack with Sticky Fingers for the first time is so difficult, because he's your weapon. If you lose your weapon, then you're gonna kind of lose, because people can just block you out. It's very easy to fatigue yourself in this matchup, especially if you're playing some of the cards that discard from the top of your deck. However, Sticky Fingers is good. It's just a good card. Being able to start with it, it's really nice. It's the only free attack in this. It's the only free weapon in this set. It's great when you're trying to puzzle piece kill some allies, either Rigor Mortis or whoever it is. But it's nice when you're fighting ally. It's nice when the Marlynn's at a point where they're only sending big arrows. It's tricky against Puffin. I probably play it for its steal effect against Puffin rather than for pure damage value as a weapon, because she has go again on her gun. It fits the 2-piece really well. It's kind of rough. Sticky Fingers is good. Committing Sticky Fingers is tricky, because if you lose him too early, then you got to just win off of card value, and you're not always going to do that. So this is just warning about this card. Now we're going to talk about thief cards. We're not going to talk about a lot of them. We're just going to talk about what I view as like the more important ones. Divvy Up is one that I'll mention for a second. Divvy Up is very interesting, but I don't like to take counters off of gold. I don't like to take counters off of Treasure Island, let alone for basically my only action point, because it doesn't have go again. I like it because it's a blue block 3. I run it, but its on play effect is not amazing. Just what it is. However, there are 3 cards that I like. Lost in Transit is great. Lost in Transit's a yellow block 3 that takes a counter off of Treasure Island and creates basically a gold counter for you. It's really good. Here, I pull it up, and I don't know if it... Lost in Transit. So Lost in Transit is good. When defend, remove gold counter. If you do and you're a thief, create a gold token. It's a yellow block 3. It's average for blocks, but as I mentioned earlier, blocks are really good because they help with overpower. So there are not a lot of blocks in the set, very little D-reacts in the set, so any blocks are pretty good. This is worth running in Scurv. It might be worth running in other heroes just because of how rare blocks are, but I'm less convinced on that. The Thief equipment, which is Light Fingers. Light Fingers is so good. I cannot stress this enough. This card is amazing. Being able to give your opponent a gold token only to take it immediately away from them is really good, especially against some heroes that need to stockpile gold, like Puffin. This card is amazing against Puffin. It's hit and miss against Marlynn because there are a lot of times where she will attack you, create the gold, immediately create the harpoon, and then like there won't be the gold anymore, and she'll have to stockpile gold for you to do that. You're not always able to get insane value off of it, but against Puffin it's great. It's an extra point of life. It's blade break, obviously, so if it was Battle Warden it'd be insane. It's a good card. Run it if you have it. It's one of your thief cards. It's really good. Being able to control gold is the name of the game for this hero. The other one is Thieving Varmints. Thieving Varmints is really nice because it's a 0 for 4. It unfortunately doesn't have go again, but it creates gold. A lot of the heroes want gold, and if you can deny them gold, you're winning. Not because your game plan benefits, but because theirs suffers. Marlynn needs gold to win, because she needs her harpoons. It's how she gets half of her value. Unless you're playing Mantle Marlynn and just playing with good arrows, and then, yeah. I'm not lucky enough to pull enough good arrows to make Mantle work, though. So Thieving Varmints is good. Lost in Transit, going back to this card for a second, this is also good for similar reasons, that if they are guaranteed to hit, then you can stop it and take their gold, and then even if they hit, they don't get gold. So if they're trying to really force through that gold, you can just be like, nah, which is good. That's Scurv out of the way. Now we move to Gravy. All right, so Gravy is tricky. I think I might have said it near the start of the video that Gravy is the hardest hero to play. In my opinion, that's accurate. Maybe people disagree, but I feel like he's the hardest hero to play in this type of format, but also probably the best if you can play him well and you have a good deck that supports it. Part of the way that you support it is you get blue cards. As I mentioned, Gravy runs the most blue cards, and the reason why is because the whole idea is that Gravy's hero ability says that if a blue card has been put into the graveyard this turn, you can play cards with Watery Grave from your graveyard. Now, the general thought is that you do this by discarding cards off of his hero ability or from other abilities, but you can just play a blue card, and when it goes to the graveyard, you activate it. So there are a bunch of blue cards. Going to mention the Mutiny cards, because the Mutiny cards are amazing for this purpose, because they are multifaceted, where you can play a Mutiny on the Swiftwater, steal a gold from your opponent, your next attack gets go again, it goes to the graveyard, and then you can summon an ally, attack with that ally, and then that ally's attack is go again, and then you can summon another ally. And then you're getting huge value off of playing one of these cards, and then it going to the graveyard. These Mutiny cards are amazing. You don't just need the Mutiny cards, though. Any blue card works. Blue Nimblisms, which are a really bad example, actually, because the Nimblism buff doesn't buff allies, but you could still play the ally, play a different attack or whatever. These Mutiny cards, trade-ins, triples, tipples, not triples. So Nimblism, obviously, Swiftwater Sloops, whatever your blue card is that you play, once it goes to the graveyard, and you can close the chain early to make it go to the graveyard if it's an attack, you're activating your hero ability, and you're able to play a card with Watery Grave, and it has go again from your compass. Because of this, you want to play a lot of blues. There are amazing blues, and then there are just blues. I think the Mutiny cards are amazing, and because they're common, you're going to have some. Now, they're not Give No Quarters, which are what you want. Give No Quarters make some of these cards insane, because you could play a Give No Quarter, close the chain, pull out a Swabby, and then send in a 7 off of one card, and then have him for next turn to either eat an attack or send for 7 again. Like, Give No Quarter is amazing. As mentioned, the Majestics in the set are kind of nutty. But any blue works. You don't have to activate your ability, which is good, because early, if you have a good ally that you need to play from graveyard, but you don't have any gold to activate your ability, or you just don't want to use the gold because you know it's on the top of your deck and your hand's good, or whatever the reason is, then you can do it, and it's great. It's a tool to have. It's half of the reason why the deck is able to perform at the levels that it is. So blue openers, very good. I cannot stress this enough. This might come obvious to people who are familiar with limited and used to like getting most value out of this, but if you're not used to it, or if this is news to you, like this is a thing, be aware of it. Look for it. It will help you. I want to talk about some of the heroes. Sorry, not some of the heroes, some of the allies now. He has a lot of allies. I think that half of them are amazing. I think the other half are okay. I think like 2 are bad. But I want to emphasize some of them. Chum being the first one. I love Chum. Chum is amazing in my opinion. He's a bit costly, which is difficult to play, but you can either play him from hand or do the watery grave thing. Both are good. Him being able to attack for free means that you're going to get consistent value. Him having 6 life is really tricky. Because not a lot of attacks puzzle piece fit into that. They either have to overcommit a bigger attack, or they have to do something. Marlynn obviously can just cannon, send a harpoon towards him, and that's okay. Obviously, like, that'll happen. Chum is great, though. I love Chum. Going from Majestics to Rares, Scuba. I like Scuba. Now, Scuba is not quite as good as I was hoping he would be, but he costs nothing to play. He has 4 health, which makes him a little tricky to actually attack and deal with, because they need to commit a 0 for 4 go again, like a Scar or a Rabble or a Life or something of the sort. Like a Trade-in won't work, and Trade-in is my go-to ally killing card. So he's a little bit tankier than most of them. He does cost 3 to attack, but it's basically pitching 3 to attack with a consistent 4. It's, in a way, a 1 card 4 if you already have him in play, and his on attack is not bad. It does help you anti-fatigue, and if you have yellow cards, then it's great. I saw someone play yellow Fiddler's Greens and like discard the same Fiddler's Green so many times off of this Scuba, and he just gained like an insane amount of life. So this card can do good things. This card can be kind of crazy. It helps in the fatigue matchup. It does pretty decent damage. I like Scuba. Now, moving on to what I think is the best common is Rigor Mortis. Every time this card is played, and I wasn't playing Puffin, it was just irritating. He hits so hard, is so cheap, and eats a lot of damage for having 1 health. There not being any Kodachis means that you're sending an attack that hits pretty hard at a guy with 1 health, unless you're already committing Sticky Fingers and you're playing Scurv. Because there aren't really cards that attack for 1 and go again, unless you're running blue trade-ins, which you could, that's within your rights. Or a blue Sikkim Shot, which is also a great example. You probably are running blue Sikkim Shots because blue block 3s. Rigor Mortis is great. I love this card. He hits so hard. He's so cheap to cost, to play and attack with. It's great. He's amazing with mutinies when you give him Go Again, Mutiny on the Swiftwater, and you can give him Go Again. It's such a good card. Highly like it. Very close second for allies is Chowder. Chowder's good. Chowder is basically a 2-card summon that gets more value if your opponent does not kill him. Like, that's good. That's good. Can't say. And even if you swarm and have a lot of allies, you're still able to get value, which is a problem. Because, there are a lot of allies where once your board state fills to a degree, you're just not able to capitalize on them. Like, Scuba's kind of like that. Like, there are probably, if you have 2 Rigor Mortises, you're probably not attacking with Scoob. But with Chowder, you're still able to get turn for turn value off of his life gain. If your opponent commits to attacking him, then you gain life. Basically, you play Chowder for 3, like you pitch a blue, play him, attack for 3, he absorbs an attack for 3, you tap him in response, you gain 1, it's a 3 for 7. It's 3 for 7 that gains more value the longer he lives. So he's good. I like him. I probably like Rigor Mortis more, which is why I ranked him higher, but I could see liking Chowder more. It kind of depends on who you're fighting. I think Chowder's better against Puffin because he has 3 life instead of 2, which means that the gun doesn't kill him, even though the gun has Go Again. Rigor Mortis is just annoying, though, because people are going to send Scar for Scars at Rigor Mortis, and you're going to be like, well, there's 3 damage that was basically wasted. Going very quickly through a couple of the other heroes that I think is good. I think Shelly is underrated. Shelly's pretty good. I think Swabby is really good because he hits like a truck. I think Limpet's pretty good in any matchup where you can get a lot of allies, or you feel like you can get more than one ally or more than two allies, or against the mirror. I like Limpet to kill enemy allies. I like Limpet. Limpet's pretty good. Shelly, I feel, is underrated. Talked about Rigor Mortis, talked about Chowder. Swabby is good because he hits like a truck. I think Cuddy is also pretty good. So I was never able to make great value out of Cuddy, but I saw people make great value out of Cuddy. Cuddy's another one of those allies where if your board is swarmed, you can actually get value out of his secondary ability. And I think he has like, I'll pull him up real quick because I don't remember the card. Cuddy, he attacks for 4, or he attacks for 3, has 4, costs 1 pitch to play and 1 pitch to attack. So he's kind of tanky, he hits for 3, which is not bad. But he's not unbelievably tanky, so yeah, that's allies. Last thing I want to talk about is getting value out of Watery Grave. Watery Grave is your keyword for the set. It's your Necromancer keyword. A lot of your cards gain benefits from discarding Watery Grave. A lot of your cards are played with Watery Grave. Being able to play around this is kind of paramount to getting the most amount of value out of a deck that, in my opinion, struggles with at times, because it feels like sometimes Gravy is insanely high value, and then other times where he's kind of struggling. There are cards like Angry Bones, Paddle Faster, etc., that says when this attacks, you may discard a card or destroy a card from the top of your deck. If that card is Watery Grave, do effect, right? Being able to know what's on the top of your deck, know if it is Watery Grave, and getting that value is really good because you can always activate from hand. But the problem with that is that you're just getting less value out of your hand to get more value out of your card, and you're not going to win like that. It's good in a pinch, not good reliable. So use your compass. That's what it's there for. As I mentioned earlier, knowing what's on the top of your deck is amazing. Either through On the Horizon, through compass, through that little, there's a hat that has Blade Break 1 and says when you defend with this, look at the top card of your deck. These are good cards. Know what's on the top of your deck is very important with Gravy to be able to play around Watery Grave, knowing when something has Watery Grave, knowing that you can commit to just destroying the top of your deck. It's great. But with that, that was the final thing I had wrote down on my script to talk about. I feel like I might have rambled a bit more on certain cards than I wanted to, and didn't ramble quite as much on cards that I probably should have. This is a very new set, and obviously my information could be incorrect to a degree. This is meant to just try to help at least a little bit, to share what I feel like I've learned. Because when I went to the premiere and played early in the event, I felt lost. I wasn't entirely certain on what cards had better value, on how to play certain decks, and I felt a lot better the more reps that I got. So my hope is that if someone watches this video, they can skip those problematic early days, and go straight into feeling comfortable with the set and trying to perform better. If this did any of that, then I'm glad, and I hope that it was useful and enjoyable. If it didn't, then, or at least a topic brought up that might inspire you to go or to do a deeper rules dive because it was something that could be interesting. This is my first video of this sort, so if there's any this is my first video of this sort, so if there was any production problems or I didn't sound quite as professional as I could be, that's probably why. I'm good at playing the game. I'm less good about talking about the game, unfortunately. So hopefully I didn't do a horrible job of explaining things. If I did and you want to comment stating what it is, I would be very happy to try to clear up anything in the comments below, or to additionally add information if there was something that I didn't bring up. I feel like I was pretty thorough, but I might have let something slip through the cracks. But I hope that this was useful, educational, or at the barest minimum, at least entertaining. And I hope that you all do excellent at your pre-release. This is Corwin, and I am signing out. Have a good night.